So we try to hire like-minded people, and the best source of that is referrals. Over half the people we hire come from referrals from existing Googlers. But you need to go beyond referrals sometimes. So here's an example from 2004 of an innovative recruitment campaign that we did. Anyone know the answer to this question? I'm not surprised. It's 10 digits, starting at digit 99 of the mathematical constant e.com. Takes you to a website where you have to solve further problems, to another site with further problems, and if you get there, then it asks for your CV. All the time not revealing that we're Google. We got some really crack engineers there who demonstrated they're curious problem solvers, the kind of people who like to innovate. But sometimes there are other sources of great talent. We acquire as a company about one other company every week. Most of them are very small, and most of the time they're what we call talent acquisitions. We're not hiring the business, we're not buying the business assets, we're buying the people within the business. And they come as a functional team who can continue to innovate. Many of you may have heard about the 20% time philosophy we have at Google, which means that every employee is allowed to spend the equivalent of 1 day a week working on stuff outside of their core role, outside of what their managers task them to do. Out of that has come some very serious products like Google News, but also some more fun things. So let me show you this. So one of our young marketing guys, a guy called Z Wang in Mountain View, was working on Android, and he thought it would be fun to test the resilience of the product by sending it into space in a low-cost, high-altitude weather balloon. So he did this. He mounted the phone on the side, he pointed it towards the little rubber robot, and sent it up into space, and the phone videoed the action. Now, it was a bit of fun. He enjoyed it. He posted the video onto YouTube. It went viral, so it gave a great deal of free publicity to Android. And then most interestingly, NASA noticed it, and they contacted us, and now the Android phone is the only approved phone for space travel and is now on the International Space Station. I'll talk about 6 ways that we use data in order to try and help drive innovation in our company and illustrate some of them. So the first is data from tests that are now easier to run. At launch for Google, when you typed in a query, you got 10 blue links. Why 10? Nobody really knew. So we did some research. We researched and we asked consumers, would you like 10 links or 20 links or 30 links? And unanimously, we were told they wanted 30 links. So we did a test. We ran a 1% experiment of 20 links and 30 links. And people who were shown 30 links started using Google less, significantly less. And it turned out that showing 30 links took 20% longer to show the page. And what people really cared about was speed. They didn't care about the number of links, they cared about speed. And we learned that from that digital data-based experiment. And if I go to search right now, you can see that we're still obsessive about speed. We've learned that lesson, and we're obsessive. So if you start typing in a query, as soon as you type, the first results come. We try and guess your answer. This is called instant search. If I type in AP, I then go to Apple. Apple, even if I spell it wrong, I go to apple pie. So it knows that I want apple pie. I don't have to correct it myself. So it's given me a very fast search. Next example is a really interesting one. We discovered a couple of years ago that the little blue links that take you to the ads on Google Search and on Gmail were a very slightly different shade of blue. In a typical company, you'd ask the marketing director to decide which one, you'd pick it, and you'd make them the same. But that's not how we work. We ran those 2 shades of blue in a 1% experiment on the web page, along with 40 other shades of blue, so we could cover the whole spectrum. And we found that users preferred and clicked more on a blue shade that had less green and more purple in it. And that change was worth $200 million to us in new revenue. So it's a good job they didn't ask me to make the decision, because I would have got that wrong. So we know how the curves are going. We follow Moore's law. And Moore's law, you all know, has been following that same curve of doubling the speed of digital capability every 18 months or 2 years or so. This was really helpful for us in the launch of Gmail. We launched Gmail back on April the 1st, 2004. At the time, we offered 1 gigabyte of free storage at a time when every other web-based email provider offered 4 megabytes. So it was 250 times higher. The press thought it was an April Fool's joke. And they said it was crazy and it was going to cripple our company. And they were right. If every user had piled in and used their gigabyte straight away, we couldn't have afforded to offer it. But we knew that the storage costs were going to come down exponentially as our usage grew. So we knew we could afford to do it. You bet on the future based upon the data. And in a similar story with YouTube, when Google bought YouTube, all the press commentary was they're throwing money down the drain, down the toilet in this picture, because there is no way that the advertising revenues can ever cover even the cost of the bandwidth. And at the time, they were right, because the cost of bandwidth back then was very expensive. But we knew the cost of bandwidth was halving every year. And so we knew we could bet on the future. And now we have a big business with YouTube, which is profitable. It depends very much on the kind of company that we're acquiring. So if you take some of the very visible examples like YouTube we acquired 4 or 5 years ago. And so that was a very big brand and company and had a very strong consumer identity that we wanted to preserve. So we worked very hard to keep most of that unit separate and autonomous, and just made sure we plugged into it the technical and infrastructural architecture that we could help them with to help them scale and cope with the growing pains more effectively. But most of the one-a-week acquisitions are companies with 5 engineers and a marketing guy. And for those people, they'll typically be working in an area like recapture or driverless cars or whatever. And we'll bring them into the nearest office. We'll give them their own space. We'll keep them as a functional team. And we'll say, keep doing what you used to do, but just do it in a way that it plugs in with the stuff that we already do. And then over time, some of those people will migrate to other teams and others will come in. But I think the real asset we're buying is an engineering cluster which knows how to work together and deliver. And we try to preserve that rather than breaking it down.